The twin sons of Velar Prime were setting behind the mountains when found the abandoned outpost. She had been walking for 3 days across the Deadlands, and her legs burned with pain. The silver skin of her arms was covered in dust, and her 4 eyes blinked slowly against the orange light. Was a scout for the military. Her job was simple. She traveled alone into dangerous places and reported what she found. Most hated this work. They preferred to stay in groups to feel the comfort of their own kind nearby, but was different. She liked the silence. She liked being alone with her thoughts. The outpost was old. The metal walls had turned brown with rust and most of the windows were broken. Walked through the entrance carefully, her boots making soft sounds on the dusty floor. She could see that someone had been here recently. There were footprints in the dust, fresh ones. She followed the footprints deeper into the building. Her hand rested on the small weapon at her hip, but she did not pull it out. Was not a fighter, she was a watcher. That was what scouts did. They watched and they remembered. The footprints led to a large room at the center of the outpost. Stopped at the doorway and looked inside. The room was empty except for some broken machines and old containers. But the footprints continued through the room and out a door on the other side. Was about to follow them when she heard a sound outside. It was the sound of ships, many ships. She moved quickly to a window and looked out at the darkening sky. 6 small fighter ships were landing on the flat ground near the outpost. They were black and ugly, with sharp edges and red markings on their wings. Felt her blood turn cold. She knew those ships. Everyone in the galaxy knew those ships. Raiders. They were the most feared creatures in this part of space. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and black eyes that showed no feeling. They traveled from world to world, taking what they wanted and killing anyone who tried to stop them. They had no home, no rules, and no mercy. Pressed her body against the wall and tried to make herself small. Her hearts were beating fast in her chest. 2 hearts like all had. Both of them were racing now. The ships opened and they came out. Counted them through the broken window. 10, 20, 30. 30 raiders, all of them carrying weapons. They moved toward the outpost in a loose group, talking to each other in their harsh language. Knew she should run. She should find a back door and escape into the darkness. That was what a scout was supposed to do, survive and report. But something made her stay. Something made her want to see what would happen next. They entered the outpost. She could hear their footsteps and their voices getting closer. She moved silently through the shadows, finding a hiding spot behind a pile of old metal containers. From there, she could see the large room where the footprints had led. And then she saw him. A human. He walked into the large room from the other door, the one the footprints had been going toward. He was carrying a large bag on his shoulder and a weapon in his hand. He stopped in the middle of the room and looked around, his eyes checking every corner. Had never seen a human in person before. She had only seen pictures and videos. Her people did not think much of humans. They were considered weak and short-lived. Their bodies broke easily, and they only had one heart. On Velar, children learned that humans were soft creatures who had somehow managed to spread across the stars despite their many weaknesses. But looking at this human now did not see weakness. She saw something else, something she could not name. The human was not tall, but he stood straight and strong. His skin was a warm brown color, darker than any. His hair was black and cut short. He wore simple clothes, gray and brown, with metal pieces protecting his chest and shoulders. His face was calm, but his eyes were moving constantly, watching everything. They entered the room behind him. The human turned slowly, not running, not panicking. He just turned and looked at them. 30 with 30 weapons, all pointed at one human. Expected him to surrender. That was what any sensible creature would do. 30 to 1 was impossible. Even the strongest warrior could not win against those numbers. The human would put down his weapon and hope for mercy, even though the never gave any. But the human did not surrender. He looked at them for a long moment. His eyes moved from face to face, counting them, studying them. Then he did something that made his breath stop in her throat. He smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was not the smile of someone who had found something funny. It was the smile of someone who had accepted something terrible. The smile of someone who knew what was coming and was not afraid. The leader of the stepped forward. He was bigger than the others, with scars covering his gray face. He spoke in the common language, the one that most species understood. "Human," the leader said, "you are alone. Put down your weapon and come with us. We need workers in the mines. If you work hard, you might live for a few years." The human did not move. He did not put down his weapon. "No," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. The leader laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. "No, you think you have a choice. Look around you, human. You are one. We are 30. There is no escape. There is no help coming. You will die here or you will come with us. Those are your only choices." The human shifted his weight slightly. His hand tightened on his weapon. His eyes were steady on the leader. "I am," the human said, "and I choose a third option." "What third option?" the leader asked. Raised his weapon. "I fight." Watched from her hiding place, her 4 eyes wide with disbelief. This human was going to fight 30 raiders alone. He was going to die. There was no other possible ending to this story. But as she watched stand there, facing impossible odds without fear, something strange happened inside her chest. Her 2 hearts began to beat in a rhythm she had never felt before. Fast and strong and filled with a feeling she did not understand. She did not know this human. She did not know his story or his reasons. But in that moment, watching him refuse to break, refuse to bend, refuse to accept defeat, she felt something change inside her. She wanted him to win. She wanted him to live. And she could not look away. The first shot came from his weapon before anyone else could move. The bright blue light crossed the room in less than a second and hit the leader directly in the chest. The big raider fell backward, surprise frozen on his face. For a moment nothing happened. The others stood still, shocked that this small human had actually attacked. They had expected him to run or surrender or beg. They had not expected him to fight. That moment of shock was all needed. He moved like water flowing through rocks. His body twisted and turned, never staying in one place for more than a heartbeat. His weapon fired again and again, each shot finding its target. 3 more fell before the others finally reacted. Pressed herself deeper into her hiding spot, her 4 eyes fixed on the battle. She had seen fight before. Her people were graceful warriors who moved with careful precision, each action planned and perfect. But the way fought was different. It was wild and desperate and beautiful in a way she had never seen. The remaining opened fire. Their weapons sent red beams of energy toward, filling the room with deadly light. Any other creature would have been hit. Any other creature would have been killed in that first attack, but was not there when the shots arrived. He had already moved. He rolled behind a broken machine, the metal taking the hits meant for him. Sparks flew into the air. Did not wait. He jumped out from the other side, firing 3 quick shots. 2 more dropped to the ground. 23 left. One of them tried to run around the machine to get a clear shot, met him with his bare hands. He grabbed the raider's weapon and twisted it away, then used his elbow to strike the creature's throat. They made a choking sound and fell. 22. Could not believe what she was seeing. Her people had always said that humans were weak. They said that human muscles were soft and their bones broke easily. They said that one warrior was worth 10 human soldiers, but this human was destroying the like they were nothing. They began to realize they were in danger. These were raiders, criminals who attacked the weak and avoided the strong. They were not used to prey that fought back. Some of them began to look for exits, thinking about running. But their new leader, a female with blue marks on her gray skin, screamed at them to keep fighting. She pointed at and shouted orders. The The spread out around the room, trying to surround the human, trying to give him nowhere to hide. Saw what they were doing. He grabbed a broken piece of metal from the floor and threw it at the nearest. The sharp edge caught the raider in the face. While that one was falling, shot two more who had tried to move behind him. 19. A blast of red energy hit shoulder. Saw him stumble, saw the pain flash across his face. His armor had taken most of the damage, but some of it had gotten through. Blood began to spread across his arm, dark red against his brown skin. And he would have stopped then. Pain was a warning from the body, a signal to retreat and heal, but did not stop. He switched his weapon to his other hand and kept firing. Another hit, this one caught his leg. Fell to one knee, his face tight with pain, but still he did not stop. From his knee he fired 3 more shots, 3 more fell. 16. His hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She had never seen anything like this. She had never seen any creature take so much damage and keep fighting. It was impossible. It was against all the laws of nature. When a body was hurt, it was supposed to stop. It was supposed to protect itself. That was how life worked. But kept fighting. He pushed himself back to his feet, using a wall for support. His leg was bleeding badly now, leaving red marks on the floor wherever he stepped. His arm hung at his side, barely able to hold his weapon. But his eyes were still alive. His eyes were still full of fire. The blue-marked female leader charged at him with a long blade. It was a traditional weapon, sharp enough to cut through metal. She swung at its head, expecting an easy kill. Caught the blade with his injured arm. The edge cut deep into his flesh, hitting bone. Could see the pain explode across his face. But instead of screaming, instead of falling, pulled the female toward him. With his other hand, he pressed his weapon against her chest and fired. 15. His arm was ruined now. The blade had cut through muscle and tendon. It hung uselessly at his side, dripping blood onto the floor. Did not even look at it. He just raised his other arm and kept shooting. They were panicking now. They had come here expecting easy prey. They had expected a quick capture and maybe some fun before they took the human to the mines. Instead, half of them were dead or dying on the ground, and this human, this bleeding, broken human, was still standing. Some of them ran. They dropped their weapons and ran for the doors, running for their ships. Shot 2 of them in the back before they could escape. The others made it outside and disappeared into the night. 8 left. These 8 were the bravest or the of the group. They stood together in a line, all their weapons pointed at. He stood facing them, alone, covered in blood and wounds that should have killed him 3 times over. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then took a step forward. His bad leg almost gave out. He stumbled, caught himself on a broken machine, pushed himself straight again. Blood was running down his face now from a cut on his head. His breathing was heavy and rough. His body was failing him piece by piece. But he took another step. And another. The 8 watched him come, their black eyes wide with something that looked like fear. They were the raiders. They were the hunters. They were the ones who made other species afraid. But now, watching this broken human walk toward them, they felt something they had never felt before. Terror. They opened fire, all 8 of them all at once, filling the air with deadly red light. There was no way to dodge. There was no way to escape, did not even try. He walked into the fire. 2 blasts hit his chest. One hit his already ruined arm. Another caught his hip. He fell forward, landing hard on his hands and knees. His weapon dropped from his fingers and slid across the floor. They stopped shooting. They watched the human, waiting for him to die. But was not dead. His body was broken. His blood was spreading across the floor in a growing pool. Every part of him was telling him to stop, to give up, to let go. He reached for his weapon. His fingers closed around it. He raised his head and looked at the 8 standing before him. And he smiled again. That same smile, that terrible, beautiful smile. "Come on," he whispered, his voice rough with pain. "I am not finished yet." Behind the metal containers, felt tears running down her silver cheeks. She did not know when she had started crying. She did not know why she was crying. All she knew was that she had never seen anything so magnificent in her entire life. This human was dying. There was no doubt about that. No creature could lose so much blood and survive. But he was not giving up. He was not accepting defeat. He was going to fight until his last breath, until his last heartbeat. And knew in that moment that she would never forget him. No matter what happened next, no matter how this story ended, she would carry this human in her hearts forever. Had always believed that courage was about not feeling fear. The bravest, the ones celebrated in songs and stories, were described as fearless. They walked into battle with empty hearts, feeling nothing, caring for nothing except victory. That was what courage meant to her people. But watching, she understood that she had been wrong. True courage was not the absence of fear. True courage was feeling fear and fighting anyway. True courage was knowing you were going to die and refusing to let that stop you. Was afraid. She could see it in his eyes when he looked at the 8 remaining. She could see it in the way his hand shook as he held his weapon. He knew he was going to die here. He knew there was no escape. And yet he would not surrender. He would not stop fighting. Why? That was the question burning in his mind. Why did he keep going? What was driving this human to push past every limit, to ignore every signal from his body telling him to quit? It made no sense. It went against everything she had learned about survival and self-preservation. They were moving again. They spread out slowly, circling like predators around wounded prey. Their black eyes were careful now, watching his every movement. They had learned respect for this human. They would not make the mistake of getting too close. Tried to stand. His legs failed him. He fell back to his knees, his weapon still in his hand. Blood was dripping from his fingers now, making the grip slippery. His face was pale, the brown color fading as his life drained out of him. One of them fired. The shot hit his hand, sending his weapon flying across the room. He looked at his burned fingers, at the weapon now far out of reach. Then he looked back at and he started to laugh. It was not a loud laugh. It was quiet and rough, broken by pain, but it was real. This human with no weapon, with a body full of wounds, surrounded by enemies, was laughing. They stopped moving. They looked at each other in confusion. Nothing in their experience had prepared them for this. Prey was supposed to cry. Prey was supposed to beg. Prey was not supposed to laugh. "What is funny, human?" one of them demanded. Stopped laughing. He looked at the who had spoken. His eyes were bright despite the pain, bright with something that could not understand. "You think this is the worst day of my life," said. His voice was weak, but his words were clear. "You think I am afraid to die, but I have seen worse than you. I have lost more than you can imagine. This pain, this is nothing." He pressed one hand against the floor and pushed himself up slowly, painfully. His body screamed in protest. Blood flowed faster from his wounds, but inch by inch he rose. "I had a family once," continued. "A wife, a daughter, they were everything to me, everything. And then raiders came to our colony, raiders just like you." He was standing now, barely. His legs were shaking so badly that it seemed impossible for him to stay upright, but somehow he did. "They killed my wife while I watched. They took my daughter and sold her to slavers. I spent 3 years looking for her. 3 years of fighting and bleeding and almost dying more times than I can count." They were frozen, unable to look away, even felt paralyzed by his words. There was so much pain in his voice, so much loss, so much sorrow. "I found her eventually," said. "In a mining camp on the edge of known space. She was dead. She had been dead for 2 years, worked to death in the darkness, never seeing the sun again." He took a step toward then another. They backed away from him, unable to stop themselves. This broken, dying human was somehow more terrifying than any threat they had ever faced. "So you see," said, "I am not afraid of dying. Death would be a gift. Death would mean seeing my family again. But I cannot die yet. Not until I have made as many raiders as possible pay for what they do." He reached down and picked up a piece of broken metal from the floor. It was sharp and jagged, about the length of his arm. Not a weapon really, just a piece of garbage, but in his hand it looked deadly. "You came here for easy prey," said. "You found something else." They looked at each other. There were still 8 of them and was barely able to stand. The smart thing to do was attack together, overwhelm him with numbers, finish this fight quickly. But none of them wanted to be the first to move. None of them wanted to be the next to die. Understood then. She understood why humans had spread across the galaxy despite being weaker and shorter-lived than other species. She understood why the great empires were careful not to make enemies of them. It was not because humans were strong. It was not because they were smart or fast or powerful. It was because of this thing inside them that refused to give up. This fire that burned even when everything else had turned to ash. Other species fought to survive. Humans fought because they could not do anything else. Fighting was built into their souls. It was part of what made them human. Had 2 hearts, but those hearts could be broken. They could be filled with fear. They could decide that survival was more important than victory. Humans had only 1 heart, but that heart was made of iron. That heart did not know how to stop. Took another step forward. Took another step back. The distance between them was shrinking, but none of the raiders wanted to close it. "Come on," whispered. "What are you waiting for?" One of them finally found courage. He raised his weapon and charged screaming in rage. Waited until the last moment, then stepped to the side. The piece of metal in his hand found the raider's throat. 7 left. The dying fell at its feet, barely managed to stay standing after the effort of the kill. His body was failing faster now. He had minutes left, maybe less. But he turned to face the remaining 7, the bloody metal still in his hand. "Who is next?" he asked. Tears were flowing freely now. She did not try to hide them. She did not try to stop them. She was witnessing something impossible, something beautiful, something that changed everything she thought she knew about the universe. This human was going to die. There was no doubt about that. But he was not going to die on his knees. He was not going to die begging for mercy. He was going to die standing, fighting, making his enemies pay for every second of life they took from him. And in that moment, felt something shift inside her. Something that had been sleeping for all her life suddenly woke up. She looked at this human, this dying, magnificent human, and she made a decision. She was not going to let him die alone. She was not going to let his story end here. She pulled her weapon from her hip and stepped out of the shadows. The first shot from his weapon hit A in the back of the head. The raider dropped without a sound, dead before he touched the ground. The others spun around, shocked to find a new enemy behind them. Did not give them time to react. She fired again and again, her aim steady despite the shaking in her hearts. Another fell, then another. She was a scout, not a warrior, but at this distance she could not miss. 5 left. They were trapped now, caught between 2 enemies. Their panic had taken over completely. Some of them tried to run for the door. Threw his piece of metal at one, catching the raider in the back. The stumbled and fell. Shot another one as he tried to escape past her. The remaining 3 turned to face, deciding he was the weaker target. They charged at him together, their weapons forgotten in their desperate need to kill something. Met them head on. He had no weapon now, nothing but his broken body and his iron will. The first reached him and swung a fist at his face, ducked under the blow and drove his shoulder into the raider's stomach. They fell together, crashing to the ground. The second kicked in the ribs while he was down, heard the sound of bones breaking, gasped in pain but did not stop moving. His hand found a piece of debris on the floor and he stabbed upward, catching the kicking in the leg. The third jumped on top of, hands reaching for his throat. Could not shoot without hitting. She ran forward, her legs carrying her faster than she had ever moved before. She reached the fighting mass of bodies and pressed her weapon against the third's head. She pulled the trigger. Two left. The one had knocked down and the one he had stabbed in the leg. Both of them were trying to crawl away, leaving trails of blood on the dusty floor. Finished them with two quick shots. Then there was silence. Stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, surrounded by the bodies of 30 raiders. Her weapon was still raised, her 4 eyes searching for any movement, but nothing moved. Nothing breathed except her and the human lying on the ground behind her. She turned around slowly, was on his back staring at the ceiling. His chest was moving up and down, but each breath seemed harder than the last. Blood was everywhere, spreading out from his body like a dark red blanket. Dropped to her knees beside him. Up close, she could see how bad his injuries were. The wound on his arm had turned the flesh into something that did not look like an arm anymore. His leg was twisted at a wrong angle. There were burns and cuts all over his face and chest. She could see bone in some places. No creature should be alive with these wounds. No creature should still be breathing. But was still breathing, barely. His eyes moved, finding her face. He looked at her with a strange expression, like he was trying to understand what he was seeing. A stranger, someone who had helped him without any reason. "Why?" he whispered. The word was so quiet she almost did not hear it. Did not know how to answer. She had asked herself the same question when she stepped out of the shadows. Why did she help him? Why did she risk her life for a human she had never met? It made no sense. It went against every rule of survival that scouts were taught. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I watched you fight. I watched you refuse to give up, and I could not let you die alone." His lips moved into something that might have been a smile. "Thank you," he said. Then his eyes closed, and his body went still. Felt panic rise in her chest. She pressed her fingers against his neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, weak and slow, but there. He was not dead, not yet. She looked around the room, trying to think. She needed medical supplies. She needed to stop the bleeding. She needed to do something before this human slipped away forever. There was a medical kit on one of the bodies. Raiders always carried them because their kind of work led to many injuries. Grabbed it and opened it with shaking hands. Inside she found bandages, chemicals for cleaning wounds, and small tools for basic surgery. It was not enough. These supplies were meant for cuts and bruises, not for the kind of damage had suffered, but it was all she had. She worked through the night. She cleaned his wounds and wrapped them as best she could. She set his broken leg using pieces of metal from the destroyed machines. She used all the bandages, all the cleaning chemicals, everything in the medical kit. When she was finished, she sat back and looked at him. He was still breathing. His pulse was still there, a little stronger now. Maybe if she could get him to proper medical care, he might survive. But the nearest outpost was days away, and she could not carry him that far, not alone. The ships, they were still outside, waiting for pilots who would never return. Ran out of the building and found the ships exactly where they had landed. She chose the one that looked most intact and climbed inside. The controls were different from ships, but the basics were the same. After a few minutes of experimentation, she figured out how to start the engine. The ship hummed to life, its lights blinking on. She flew the ship to the entrance of the outpost. Then she went back inside to get. He was heavier than he looked, solid with muscle despite his injuries. She dragged him slowly across the floor, careful not to make his wounds worse. It took her an hour to get him into the ship. By the time she finished, she was exhausted. Her arms burned and her legs ached, but she did not stop to rest. She climbed into the pilot's seat and lifted the ship into the air. The stars appeared above her as she broke through the atmosphere. Thousands of them, millions of them, bright points of light in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there was her home. Somewhere out there was safety. She set a course for the nearest medical station. It was not a station, but it would have to do. They would have questions about the ship and the badly wounded human inside it. Did not care. She would answer their questions. She would pay any price. She just needed this human to live. In the back of the ship was still unconscious. His breath was shallow but steady. His face was peaceful now, the pain hidden behind closed eyes. He looked young like this, younger than she had thought during the battle. How old was he? How much of his life had been filled with fighting and loss? Reached out and touched his cheek gently. His skin was warm against her silver fingers, so different from her own, so fragile and yet so strong. "Hold on," she whispered. "Please hold on. I am taking you somewhere safe." He did not respond, but his chest kept rising and falling, his heart kept beating, and kept flying through the stars, carrying this strange human toward whatever future waited for them both. As she flew, she thought about what she had witnessed, about the impossible things she had seen. A human fighting alone against 30 enemies, a human refusing to die, a human made of will and fire and something that had no name in her language. And she whispered to the darkness, to herself, to no one and everyone at once, "I want him to be mine." She did not fully understand what those words meant. Not yet, but she felt them in both her hearts, burning like twin suns in her chest. Whatever happened next, she knew her life would never be the same. Opened his eyes to white light. For a moment, he thought he was dead. He thought he had finally crossed over to whatever waited on the other side. Maybe his wife and daughter were waiting for him there. Maybe he would finally rest. But then the pain came, and he knew he was still alive. Dead people did not hurt like this. He was lying in a bed, a real bed with soft sheets and clean pillows. Above him, the ceiling was made of some kind of metal, smooth and gray. Medical machines beeped quietly beside him, their lights blinking green and blue. Tubes connected his arm to bags of clear liquid hanging nearby. He tried to sit up. His body screamed in protest. Every muscle, every bone, every inch of him was filled with fire. He fell back against the pillows, gasping. "Do not move." The voice came from his left, turned his head slowly and saw something unexpected. Was sitting in a chair beside his bed. Female, he thought, based on her features. Her skin was silver like moonlight, and she had 4 eyes that were currently watching him with concern. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry. The stood up and brought a cup of water to his lips. He drank carefully, the cool liquid bringing life back to his mouth. "Where am I?" he managed to ask. "A medical station," the said. "On the edge of the neutral zone. You have been unconscious for 12 days." 12 days. That meant his wounds had been truly bad. Tried to remember what had happened. The outpost. The fighting alone against impossible numbers. And then nothing. He said, "Did they follow us?" "They are dead, all 30 of them." The sat back down in her chair. "You killed most of them yourself. I finished the rest." Stared at her. Memories were slowly returning now. The battle, the pain, and at the very end a figure stepping out of the shadows. Silver skin and 4 eyes, a weapon firing at his enemies. "You saved me," he said. "I helped," the corrected. "You saved yourself. I just made sure you survived long enough to be treated." There was something in her voice that did not understand. Something soft and careful, like she was afraid of saying too much. He studied her face, trying to read her expression. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you help me?" There was quiet for a long moment. Her 4 eyes looked everywhere except at his face. Her silver hands twisted together in her lap. "I watched you fight," she finally said. "I watched you face impossible odds and refuse to surrender. I had never seen anything like it. My people say that humans are weak, but you are not weak. You are the strongest thing I have ever seen." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was even softer. "When I saw you falling, saw you dying, I could not stay hidden anymore. I could not let something so magnificent end in that dusty room. Did not know what to say. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. No one had ever looked at him the way this was looking at him now. "What is your name?" he asked. She said, "I'm a scout for the military, or I was. After what I did, they will probably not want me back." "What do you mean?" Finally met his eyes. Her 4 silver eyes locked with his 2 brown ones. "I stole a ship. I brought a human to a station in the neutral zone. I abandoned my mission and disappeared without reporting to my commanders. These are serious crimes among my people." Felt a weight settle in his chest. This stranger had given up everything to save him. Her career, her home, maybe her freedom. And she had done it for a human she had never met before. "I am sorry," he said. "I did not ask you to help me. You should not have sacrificed so much." "No," said quickly. "Do not apologize. I made my choice. I would make it again." She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes intense. "Do you understand? Watching you fight changed something inside me. I cannot explain it with words. But when I saw you refuse to die, refuse to break, I felt something I had never felt before." She reached out and took his hand. Her silver fingers were cool against his skin. He could feel her trembling slightly. "My people have a tradition," she said. "When someone saves another's life, when they risk everything for a stranger, it creates a bond. We call it the soul debt. The one who was saved owes a debt to the one who saved them, a debt that can only be repaid with a lifetime of service and loyalty." Looked at their joined hands. "But you saved me. If anyone owes a soul debt, it is me who owes you." "That is what I am trying to say." His voice was barely above a whisper now. "I do not want your debt. I do not want your service. What I want is something else, something forbidden among my kind." She took a deep breath. "I want to offer you a life bond. I want to tie my life to yours, to share your path wherever it leads. I want you to be mine, and I want to be yours." The room was very quiet. The medical machines beeped their steady rhythm. Somewhere outside, ships were coming and going, people were living their lives. But in this small room, everything had stopped. "You do not know me," said slowly. "You do not know my past, my failures, the things I have done." "I know enough," said. "I know that when you faced death, you smiled. I know that when your body was broken, your spirit refused to break. I know that you carry pain inside you that would crush most beings. And I know that despite all of it, you are still fighting." She squeezed his hand gently. "I am not asking for your love. I am not asking for promises of happiness. I am only asking for the chance to walk beside you, to fight beside you, to be there when the darkness comes." Thought about his wife, dead all these years now. He thought about his daughter, lost in a mining camp on the edge of space. He had told himself that he would never care for anyone again. That caring only led to loss, and loss only led to pain. But looking at her silver skin and shining eyes, at the hope and fear mixed together on her face, he felt something stir inside him. Something he had thought was dead and buried with his family. "I am broken," he said. "I am full of anger and sorrow. I have nothing to offer you except more fighting, more pain, more danger." "Then that is what I will share with you." His grip on his hand tightened. "I am not afraid of fighting. I am not afraid of pain. The only thing I am afraid of is watching you walk away and never seeing you again." Closed his eyes. His wife's face appeared in his memory, smiling at him from across the dinner table. His daughter's laughter echoed in his mind, bright and pure. They were gone. They would always be gone, but maybe that did not mean he had to be alone forever. Maybe letting someone in was not betraying their memory. Maybe learning to live again was exactly what they would have wanted for him. He opened his eyes and looked at. "I do not understand your traditions," he said. "I do not know what a life bond means to your people. But if you are asking me to let you stay by my side to face whatever comes next together, then yes. My answer is yes." His face transformed. The worry and fear melted away. replaced by joy so bright it seemed to light up the whole room. Her 4 eyes filled with tears that sparkled like diamonds on her silver cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, "thank you." She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was a gesture, he realized. Something intimate and meaningful that he did not fully understand. But he felt the warmth of it, the connection of it, and he knew that something had changed between them. When she pulled back, she was smiling. It was the most beautiful thing he had seen in years. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you heal," said, "and when you are strong enough to walk, we leave this station and find a new path, together." And the raiders who still roam the galaxy, hurting innocent people. Smile turned sharp. "We find them and we make them pay." Felt his lips curl into a smile of his own. The same smile he had given thee in that dusty room. The smile of someone who had found a new reason to fight. "Then we have a lot of work to do," he said. Nodded, she took his hand again and held it tight. Outside the window, the stars burned bright in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, raiders were hunting. Somewhere out there, innocent people were suffering. But now there were 2 hunters on their trail, a human with an iron heart and a who had found her courage. The galaxy did not know it yet, but everything was about to change. And it all started because one alien watched a human battle alone and whispered, "I want him to be mine."